So once you've decided on the placement of your squares and you've got them held in place with your stitch markers or safety pins, you're ready to start stitching. Now I prefer to hand sew and stitch them together that way, but there are lots of ways that you can join your squares together, and you'll see lots of methods that are join as you go, which is fine if you're happy to do that. It will obviously make your squares that little bit bigger because it will add in effectively another row. But I just prefer to hand stitch. I just like this method. You'll need a wool needle and obviously some leftover yarn in the matching outer colour. If you obviously want it to blend in, you might want to be radical and stitch in a contrasting colour and give it another totally different look. But I'm going with matching. So I've already started to stitch some of these together, so you can see the effect that I get by the way that I stitch them. What I like to do is stitch in such a way that I end up with this very slight little line here, which almost frames each of the squares. I think it's just a really nice finish. So I'm going to show you that way, which is how I like to join. So I've joined along here, so now I'm going to join along this section here. This is the top of my bag. And to do that, I fold and work on the back with right sides together. Let's just turn it round now so I'm working in that space. Now if you remember, we've done 3 chains in each of the corners of our squares, so we have a middle chain in effect. We've got the second chain is always going to be the middle one, and that's where we start for each square. So I'm going to start by inserting my yarn into that second or out of the 3 chains and just pull the yarn through. Now I don't tend to knot it, don't tend to tie it off at this point at all. I just leave it hanging. Once I get going, it's secure enough, it won't fall out, especially once we do this next one as well. So I'm going to now go into the next chain in that corner, and I'll pull it a little bit taut but not too tight that I pull out the whole rest. So now that's secure enough, it won't really go anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to work along this edge now, stitching these together, and the idea is obviously we want to match up our little clusters of trebles together, and obviously if we've done them in the right numbers, it should work out perfectly. They should all match up. So we've gone into one chain, second chain, and now we're going to have the tops of 3 trebles to work into. This is the difference now of how I join them to create that line around the outside. So here is the top of my treble on this side, there's the V, and here is the treble on the top on this side here. Now you can, and there's absolutely no reason why you can't do this, is you can go under both of those and stitch them together like that. That's absolutely fine, and they will still be stitched together and it still works just as well. What I do to create that line effect is I just stitch into the outer strands of that V. So rather than going under both, I'm just going under the outer one like this. And as I go along, I'm going to start counting in my mind so I know that I'm in the right place to match them up. So I know I need to do the tops of 3 trebles now. So there's 1, 2. So as you can see, I put it through both the strands and then pull through. That little tail is in the way a little bit at the minute, but that will get better as I move along. And 3. So I've now gone into the top of my first granny cluster. Now I know I've got a chain in between. So this time I don't have an out or inner. I just go through 1/2 right through the middle of that chain. Now I'm back to a cluster again, and I'm picking up that outer arm of the V. There's 1, 2, 3, back to a chain in the middle. Now here I've got a bit of a lumpy bit because this is where I finished this round on this square, and I've got the knot at the end there. So we need to work our way around that. Best way to do that is just to make sure again that you're matching and counting your 3. So I know I need to have 3 spaces for the top here. So I can see I've got that first one, and then I've got a third one here. So actually this whole distance will be that second treble. There's 2 and 3, and I've just worked my way around that knot, and when I open it out you'll see that's joined fine. And then I go into the chain in between, and now I'm back to the next, or the last on this line of trebles. 2 and 3, and now I want to move across to be able to get to the other side. Now because I've already been joining here, there's a little bit of a jumble going on here, but you don't need to worry too much. So again, if you are counting, so I know I can see there's the first chain of my corner, and there's the first chain of my corner on the other side. I know that these were joined in the second corner, and also that this is joined on the second corner as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually scooter into this second corner on this other side, on this next chain there, and then into this chain, and now start moving across. And even though I've scooted across a little bit, if I just show you, it doesn't really make too much difference in the corner here particularly. And sometimes if I find that I've got a little bit of a gap when I've gone all the way around, you can easily go back and just put a few extra stitches in. So the fact that I've scooted over there and gone into this next corner hasn't affected the other side. So I'm going to carry on now and go to the end of this square point here. Okay, I'm just getting to the end where I'm at a point that this stitch marker is getting in the way, so I'm just going to undo that, get that out of the way, and then just finish off that last treble, and then I'm going to go into the first chain of the corner of 3 and the second chain of the corner of 3 and leave it there. I'm just going to pull my needle out and let that hang out. So now I have done this section of my bag. You can work in any direction you want to. If you've got a long enough piece of yarn, you might go along a whole stretch. You might work around in zigzags. It really doesn't matter, because when you've got them attached and once they start getting joined, it doesn't matter which direction you go in. So now you can see a little bit further this line effect that I create by working into that outer edge of the trebles, like so. So I'm going to carry on and complete stitching all of these squares together, and I'll meet you when I'm done. Okay, so I've now finished stitching all my squares together, and you can see that I've got this really nice little line effect by the way that I've stitched mine, that does this framing of the squares, which I really like. And this is the next part where we're going to start constructing the bag. You'll start seeing it come together. So I've got my 2 points on one end, and then I've got 2 on the other end. So to start off, right sides together, I'm going to bring up the other 2 points at the other end of my piece. So what I've done is just bring them together up like this, and then this is where the layout works and comes together, the magic happens. This is the extra pieces here, and these are basically going to fold in half, and then you can see my bag start to form. So I'm going to stitch together here and here, and I've also got 2 open gaps here. So you now need to work your way around stitching these together, here and here, and we leave it open from the tops of this corner all the way around. This all stays open here. And because it's just by chance, just by the way I've ended up with a bit of thread at the end of this section I stitched together, I'm actually going to use that end. So if that happens for you, you can use any carried on ends to do your next part, otherwise you'll just need to cut a little bit more off. So I'm just going to show you how I get started with this first folded corner. So let's turn it around so that I'm working in a direction that makes sense. And we're going to do the same as we did before. This is a complete square on this edge here. I'm going to find the middle of the chain 3 in the corner to start. And I can pull that quite tight because it happens to be that I'm carrying on. And then you'll see that essentially I'm folding at a corner here. So I've got the chain 3 on the corner of this folded square. So I'm going to go into the same right in the corner of the middle one there. And then on this side I've got the last of the chain 3 in the corner and the chain 3 of the corner here on this side. Now I can start joining my trebles together. So just double check and make sure you can see where you're working. So this treble is the first on that side, and here I'm going to carry on now doing the same pattern as I was doing before so that I can carry on my little line. So I'm working in the outside corners. There's the second one and the third. Then I've got the chain in the middle. Next cluster, 1, 2 and 3. And chain. 1, 2, 3. Next chain. 1, 2, 3. First chain, and then I'm going to go into that second of all the 3 on both sides like that. Now I'm going to twist around. I think I've got enough yarn to carry on, and you can see this is sort of a little bit of a jumble, but I'm going to find on now the edge here, the second chain looks like that one there, and put it through the same space as that one. Then I've got the third chain, and then I'm on the clusters again. So I'm going to count my clusters. 1, 2, 3. So I want to try and get into 2 of the 3 chains, just to line this corner up. There's the one on that side. There's the one on that side. There's the corner one. There's the corner one. And pull that. Right, they're not going to really get across that gap. I'm just going to tie a little knot there. So I just need to get another bit of yarn to fill that hole, and then I'm going to do the same on this side and work across here, here and down this bit. So I'll meet you when that's all stitched up. So I've now stitched all my sides that were open other than that top part, so just double check that you've got the right bits that are left open so you can get into your bag. So before we do the big reveal and turn it inside out, we've obviously got all these different ends. Yours may well be in different places depending on where you stopped and started joining and so on, and what you've done to join these edges here. So your last job before you turn it inside out is to finish off these edges by weaving them into your stitches. You might find, if you can see this one here, I've got a large, kind of large gap there. just where some bits haven't quite all gone in. So what I tend to do, if I find any joins that are quite large, you could, as I've got two together, I'll just do a little knot there, or a little, and then I'm just gonna catch in the yarn as part of my weaving in. I'm just going to do a few in and out around that slightly bigger gap than I wanted, and then I'm just going to take the yarn through a few stitches, put it up and snip off the end, and do the same with this one. Doesn't really matter which way you go. Just going to thread it up through this direction, and it's up to you how far you want to go up. Snip off the end. I've got quite a few little in the corner here. Just tie a few off for each other just for a little bit of extra security, and then I'm going to weave those ends in there. Okay, all my ends are now cut off, and I can turn my bag the right way around. There we go. So this is the slightly smaller size because I've got the 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds for each of my squares rather than the 5, so it makes this size. I quite like this little handbag size, it's very cute. So my last job is to make the handles. So for the handles, I'm going to show you how to make this stitched type, which is just using more of the same body colour and just crocheting some panels that we fold in half. I'll show you that in just a second. Or you've got the options of buying their way here. I've attached some of these bamboo handles. You can get these on Etsy, on Amazon, find them in all sorts of places. Some of them don't have the rings on, some of them directly stitch in to it, but there's lots of different options you can do for your handles, so that's something else you can experiment with and make your bag even more personal. So let's look at making these crocheted version. Okay, so we're going to start the handles that we're going to attach into these corner spaces here on the top of my bag. Now in my pattern we talk about using the same yarn as the main bag colour. So because I've got this light grey here, I've got to do my handles in light grey. There's absolutely nothing to say that you couldn't do your handles in one of the other colours and pick out one of those if you wanted to. I'm going to go with mine being in the main colour of the bag. So to start off, I'm going to attach my hook to the yarn, and off we go. So you can start with chaining 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this is pretty much going to form then the width of my unfolded handle. I'm going to insert my hook into the second chain from the hook, and then I'm just going to do rows of double crochet. That's double crochet in UK terms, which is single crochet in US terms. Working this small with this cotton type yarn that's made from lots of cotton strands, the beginning can be a little bit trickier where it does catch a little bit, but once you get going you'll find it much easier to work with. So there's one row. I'll then chain 1 and turn, and I'm working under both arms of the V stitch created. So underneath the first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both. Under, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both on the hook. insert my hook, yarn over, pull through both, yarn over, pull through both on the hook. I'm doing that all the way along, and I should have 5 stitches, because if you remember we chained 6, but we inserted the hook into the second chain from the hook, which means that's almost acting as my first turning chain, and then we're actually doing 5 stitches along. So I'm going to just keep doing that, get to the end, I chain 1 and turn, then I'm working into the next space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, so there's 2 on the hook, yarn over and pull through both, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2 on the hook, yarn over, pull through both. So I've now done 3 rows. You might want to find yourself some way of counting your rows, but you're going to do either a total of 70 rows if you're making the handbag size, or 82 rows if you're making the slightly bigger. It is up to you. You can see how long that is and feel if that's the right for you. You can make them shorter, make them longer, it's up to you. But from my pattern, that's the guidance I give. So I'm just going to keep going now till I've made 1 strip. Okay, so I've now made a strip, which for the smaller handbag size I suggest 70 rows, but you can, as I've said already, make them longer, sort of roughly decide. I do find that once you fold in half and we stitch, they have a little bit of stretch in them, so bear that in mind as well with your deciding on the length, because if it does stretch out a little bit, it'll obviously make them longer. So I've got to the end, that's where my hook was, and the end there. So I've only got a little bit of yarn left, so I'm not going to cut it, otherwise you might cut it. But actually what's a really good idea is to keep a really long piece attached. If you do cut, keep a nice long end, and you can use that for the stitching without having to restart in again. So now I'm going back to my stitching and my wool needle, and now I'm going to work all the way along and fold what I've created in half, and I'm going to stitch it together down this side here. Now I can see, again, I'm looking for points to line up so it ends up being even, and these ends to my rows here are good points to use as a visual reference to line up and get it matched up. When I come to stitch it, again, it doesn't really matter where you go, because it's the same colour, it blends in anyway. But I tend to just go in between each of these, or find an even spot. So I just put my needle through and pull, and then I just work all the way along. I can see that there's almost like a V stitch there, which is the end of a row, and just go all the way along in between them. That's a fairly large stitch, you can see it there, but I don't mind that, and I think it's fine, you don't really see it. So that just, for me, using that point there, I know that that's lining them up, making them even. So I'm just going to work my way to the end doing that. Okay, I'm just coming up to the end of stitching this strip in half, stitching it together, and I'm just going to find a space in the end to pop in another stitch. Okay, so once you've done that, just unravel it a little bit if it's gone a little bit twisted, and just make sure you know where the stitched end is, because the stitched bit you want to be kind of facing in when you come to attach it to your bag. So I'm going to show you just with this one how then to attach it. There is really no right or wrong way. You'll find a way that suits you really, but I just want to show you how I do it. But essentially what I make sure I do initially is make sure that this whole corner space completely covers over the handle, and then I kind of use this almost as a loop to loop round quite a few stitches. So I start by probably bringing my yarn somewhere up a little bit higher from the base, and then just going through the handle. Just grab a whole bundle of stitches, doesn't have to be a certain type or which ones. I'm then just going to do quite a lot of stitches, just wrapping round that corner chain of the actual bag body, and just keep doing a few like that all the way around. I am tending to keep within the top layer of the handle, so as you know it's folded. You can, if you push it on the side, you can feel that it's like a tube, and I'm almost just going within the first layer. I'm not, if I can help it, coming right through. It doesn't matter if you do because it's on the inside, but just out of neatness I tend to try and just keep within that top layer. Okay, so now I've gone a few times round in that loop. Then what I do then is, obviously you can see it's still not really attached at the back here, so I do a few more going around the side, and then I will tend to turn it over and then stitch a few more from this side, this time going through the base of the handle and grabbing some stitches from the bag itself, like that. And then I just look around for anywhere where it looks like there's a bit of a weakness that is not fully attached, and just do any more extras in. And then I bring the yarn out, I go through the middle, so I'm not coming out the other side. Just stick the yarn through the middle, make it come up somewhere through there, and then snip it off. And this loose end here, which was left over from the handle, I'll just weave that somewhere into there. Then when you come to the next one, just make sure that they're facing, the handle is untwisted, so that if you've laid it flat that way, make sure you bring it round so it faces the same way before you attach onto that side, and do it exactly the same way. Once you've done that, you have completed your bag. Now I quite like mine unlined. I like the gappiness, I like the market bag feel by not lining them, but I know lots of people for practical reasons like to line them, because obviously small objects can fall through these gaps, keys can get stuck in it and pull them, etc. So if you're going to want to use it lots and want to use it for that sort of everyday use, you may want to consider lining it. So there we have it, a beautiful granny square, very on trend bag, which I think is so versatile. There's so many ways you can make them. They're such a great thing to do and a really lovely project. I'd love to see your versions, so please do tag me in any social media posts that you make sharing your lovely bags. Until next time, see you soon.